Benjamin Franklin famously said, "In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes." Well, I'm not an accountant, but I have paid the cost of experiencing profound grief, having watched my brother go from the prime of his life to holding his hand on his deathbed. In our lifetime, every single one of us will experience the grief, heartbreak and loss that comes with losing someone we love. Every single one of us. That loss may be of your mum, your dad, your grandparent, your friend, your partner, your child. No one loss is more important than the others. I've lost count how many times people have said to me, "I only lost my insert family member here. I can't imagine losing my brother." My pain's not worse than your pain, and it's important to remember that grief is relative. Everyone grieves differently, and each loss is as unique as the person who has left us. Grief is defined by the individual, not society. Whatever your loss, grief can be devastating. It can turn your life upside down and inside out. It can eat away at you until there's nothing left, until you feel like there's no way you can survive. I know, because I've been there in the days, weeks and months before and after I held my brother's hand on his deathbed. But there is hope. I'm going to be sharing with you how grief changed my life and how it changed my life in a profoundly positive way. And I'm going to be sharing with you the many, many mistakes I made along the way to unearthing my 3 steps to surviving grief. The 3 steps to surviving grief have been crafted from my own personal journey with loss, moulded by the negative avoidance I experienced and how this impacted both myself and those around me, and born from the positive purpose I have found in channeling my grief into something that benefits others. For those directly affected by grief, my hope is that you'll have a better understanding that the negative outcomes of grief do not have to define you, but they can help shape you in a positive way. For those supporting someone through grief, my hope is that you'll have a better understanding of how to help the person you care for through the hardest time of their life. This is my brother Robin, taken at Christmas 2010. Rob didn't smoke, barely drank, always ate healthily and exercised daily. He was 23 and in the prime of his life. 3 weeks after this photo was taken, my brother was diagnosed with a stage 4 mediastinal germ cell tumour. Now, unless you've got a medical degree or been directly affected by this rare form of cancer, you'll be forgiven for asking, what the hell is a stage 4 mediastinal germ cell tumour? My brother had a tumour the size of a grapefruit in between his heart and his lungs, a rare form of testicular cancer that was at the last stage of diagnosis. Rob had a poor prognosis and a slim chance of survival. As my brother was whisked away to London to be treated by the UK's leading specialist, being put through several rounds of grueling chemotherapy that stripped his hair, his muscle and his dignity, as my mum and dad tried their hardest to juggle hospital with real life, and as everyone around me tried to get their heads around this impossible situation, I'd love to say that I was a rock, an anchor, a calm sea of helpfulness and practicality. I'd love to say that, but I'd be lying. In reality, I fell into a downward spiral of drinking far too much, acting irresponsibly and not caring about my actions or the implications of them. I fell into what I now call negative avoidance. Avoiding my feelings, avoiding dealing with reality, and avoiding facing the impact of my actions. On the 27th of October, I was standing in my local co-op when I received a call from my mum. She, my dad and my brother had been at the hospital to discuss options following months of treatment, secondary leukemia and an unsuccessful bone marrow transplant. She simply asked, "Are you far away? Can you come home now?" But her voice was breaking. It was in that moment, while standing in the juice aisle of my local co-op, that I knew my brother was dying. All hope was lost. The final weeks of my brother's life were split between spending as much time as possible with my family, and as ashamed as I am to say it, doubling down on my efforts to avoid. One morning, in the final week of my brother's life, at a time when I knew my brother only had a matter of days left on this earth, I found myself drunk in the back of my mum's car, with my brother in the front seat travelling to the hospice. Imagine this for a second. My brother was frail, tired and literally dying, and I had to borrow his cardboard sick bucket and ask my mum to pull over so I could throw up in the back of our local Tesco's. My brother passed away on December 10th, 2011, aged just 24. I held his hand to the very end. From a drunk and bereaved 22-year-old to nearly a decade later, standing here talking openly and honestly about my experience. It would be easy to look back at how far I've come with rose-tinted glasses, but that wouldn't be doing justice to the journey that it took to get me here. They say time is a great healer. I say bullshit. It took more than time to get me here. It took a hell of a lot of patience, love and support. And I want to share with you the 3 steps it took to turn my negative avoidance into positive purpose. My 3 steps for surviving grief. Step 1, self-awareness. Understanding the impact negative avoidance is having on your life and the lives of the people around you. Now, it should be noted that the self in this step is actually a misnomer. No one who is negatively avoiding their grief should be expected to come to this conclusion themselves. What is important is the clarifying moment in the mind, often originating from an outside source. An intervention from friends and family, experiencing an all-time low, or being given an ultimatum by a loved one. My moment of self-awareness came following yet another drunken night of avoidance. During an argument with my then girlfriend, now wife, I proclaimed, "I guess this is me now." Thankfully, she was not happy with this outcome and swiftly replied, "Go and get help or I'll leave you." In that moment, I finally realized the impact I was having on the people I cared about most, that my grief was getting in the way of my future, and that I would lose that future if I didn't start to make changes. Step 2, self-reflection. Having the opportunity to talk about your grief, to address it, acknowledge it, and understand it, and allowing yourself to grieve in a healthy way. For many, this outlook could be as simple as talking to a friend, a colleague, a loved one. Just having a safe space is enough. For many more, professional help is needed to allow them to step back and reflect on what has happened to them, the impact of their actions, and how to change their behaviours and coping mechanisms moving forwards. My self-reflection came in the form of grief counselling. The first session was spent crying for 60 minutes. The next it was 50, then 40, and so on and so on. By the last session, we were just talking, and my counsellor said, "I don't think you need any more sessions. I'm always here if you need me, but for now, I'm going to sign you off." I haven't been back since, but me and my wife have spent years learning triggers, picking up on warning signs, and taking the time to self-reflect in a healthy way when needed. Rob's birthday, Christmas time, the milestones that come around every damn year. Step 3, self-fulfilment. Accepting your new normal and acknowledging the positive purpose in your life. We don't get over grief. It isn't an illness that we can cure. It's an affliction that we learn to live with. And the power that we hold over grief is the ability to learn to live again. This can be as simple as getting out of bed, or it can be as complex as running as a marathon. For someone who has lost a loved one, the powerful act of acknowledging the positives, no matter how small, is the very essence of positive purpose. My self-fulfillment has come in the form of founding a charity that aims to prevent another family going through what we did, to raise awareness, reduce embarrassment, and save lives. This has been my catharsis, my focus, my positive purpose. As with grief, these steps are relative to the individual. Not everyone drinks themselves into oblivion to avoid their reality. Not everyone finds grief counselling enough to support them. And not everyone sets up a charity to fulfil themselves. And that's okay. My hope from this talk isn't to tell you how to grieve. My only hope from this talk is that you don't have to go through what I did, to make the same mistakes I did, to feel the shame, the guilt, the pain of knowing that you made a bad situation worse, or that you hurt the people you love during the hardest time of their lives, and that you can never go back and change the past. I hope that you learn from my mistakes. I hope that you heed my lessons, and I hope that you do better for yourself and those around you, because you can change your future. I'll leave you with this. It's been said that grief is the price we pay for love. It's a debt that we will continue to pay for the rest of our lives, but it need not be a crippling debt, an unmanageable debt. We need not live our life in arrears. If we can turn our negative avoidance into positive purpose, we can manage that debt. We can pay when the bill is due, and we can stop that debt from passing to the next generation. Thank you.